Hi, this is Mike, and we're looking at the BLX Bitcoin chart. Now, I actually was going to start making a couple of videos on XLM XRP in terms of price prediction and the different ways of doing that. But during the process of coming up with that video, I actually had a massive revelation. Now, the good thing is, I've been focusing primarily on three charts lately: XLM, XRP, and the euro, right? Bitcoin is around about there as well, but mainly it's those other three. But because of those other three, I have come to a conclusion that is at the best interesting and at the least probably going to change your view a little bit. Now, the reason why I think this is important is because knowing the waves at their core explains a lot about what's going on in these markets, right? It also kind of along the way tries to help paint a picture of some sort, right? And one that can potentially, help us figure out what altcoins are doing and what Bitcoin is doing, and in what manner is it doing it, right? I think those are the key questions. But um, the problem with looking at fractal patterns, and I've mentioned this before, is to someone with AriasWave knowledge, it's like a hammer. Everything looks like a nail. So that's why I've been going a bit deeper. And if you notice in my last Euro video, I talked about how the first A wave back in 1985 had an expanding correction, right? And for some reason, that was lingering in the back of my mind when I came back to look at Bitcoin to do some measurements. And a whole bunch of stuff stood out right there in front of me. Now, this video might go on for a while, but you might learn something pretty cool, right? Now, we know that in the, how can I put it? In altcoins, we're producing, we've had like a couple of 1-2 patterns already. And you look at Bitcoin and you think, oh, Bitcoin's miles ahead. But is it really though? Right? And before I go any further, I want to just give an opinion or just a view that I've had is that isn't it such a strange coincidence? And I probably said this before that Bitcoin came out at the bottom of the GFC, right? Is it a coincidence that nobody knows who the creator is? Is it also a coincidence that we have all these altcoins, some of them which have amazing real utility, and as I've said before, Bitcoin could be the distraction to those utilities for some reason? Because you think about it, what requires adoption is network effects, and network effects needs to take place in the public, which is probably why under the radar you have XLM XRP, right? We know their utilities potentially. XRP could replace derivatives, the system that underlies the derivatives market, right? The debt market, $1 quadrillion market, and XLM could replace the US dollar as the world reserve currency. But it's under the radar, right? And like I said, network adoption is what drives the use of these technologies, etc. And I don't know, just coincidence, right? Probably. Now you take a look at what I've put on the chart here, down the lows at the beginning. Now you'll notice in a moment why this line is here, right? And there's a very good reason for it. And this kind of probably takes us back to the beginning. What happened in the beginning, right? Now, the first thing I need to mention here is that we had a low that went back to zero point zero 0.01 in 2010, right? The only thing that I believe could cause that type of thing is it could be like the B wave of wave B, right? Because you would have had wave one, and then you would have had A, and then you would have had the start of B, correction, 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 something like that, and then C. That's the only wave that could come back to 0.01, in my opinion, or whatever that is, because it could either have been A, which I doubt it, you know, and I don't think it was. Sorry, am I getting this right? Yeah, right. So B would have ended up here, C would have ended up here, right? That move down, is that a 5-wave move right there? Can we see it, right? It could have been, possibly, right? But the point needs, you can't forget what point I'm trying to make here, right? And we'll get there. So A1, A, B, C. Now, in the beginning, did Bitcoin go to 19 cents, 20 cents? I don't know, right? Um, Maybe someone has a way of seeing that chart from the beginning. Please do post it in the comments if you do have any of that. I'd love to see it. But then you think about that Euro video I made, right? And you think, well, corrective waves can expand to the upside. And for some reason, I started to look at this and I started to see a D and an E, right? A D and an E, with this being a 5-wave move down. And that's why you have that line, because wave 2, I believe, ended up here, right? So there's a couple of things going on here. One is that that's the beginning of, the first wave of wave 3, right? And when you see how I've labeled that out, you might be surprised, okay? You might be surprised at what we're looking at today in the market is actually very interesting. So everything that happened from basically 0.01 all the way up to like $1,000, like 1,000 whatever it was, 150 whatever, was completely corrective, right? And then interestingly enough, wave E, what I believe is wave E, because look at it, it's moving down in 3 waves. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? Initially, I thought it was A, B. Wait. A, B, C, D, E. But then I realized, no, everything looks like a nail when you're a hammer. Be careful. Okay, so what's interesting about where it fell? Well, think about it. It fell to 1616, almost could even be 8, because my line's slightly below that potentially. But isn't that like a Fibonacci number? 1.618 almost? Interesting. Very interesting. So that means if this is the start of wave 3 only from 161 whatever, $161, well, this is how I've labeled the first move up. Looking carefully, we got a zigzag wave 1. We got a wave 2. We have a zigzag wave 3. And then I thought, hang on, what happens after that? And then what I was surprised to see, that the rest was corrective. Wave 4 expanded, right? Just like we've seen in the euro recently too, at a small degree for wave 4. Is you had A, B, C, D, and this here is another E wave, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A lot of alternation between 2 and 4, right? And that there is totally why the pattern, the corrective portion of altcoins is so weird looking. And the same can be said for this E wave because of altcoins. And I've noticed that this type of thing happens sometimes, but I don't want to get into that. So we've got 2 E waves going on here, right? Now, things can only get more interesting from this point, because you've got E waves in wave 2, E wave in wave 4 of wave 1, right? And then you've got to think, where's the next E wave? Well, you got to think, first of all, this is only wave 4 low. What's wave 5? We're looking for zigzags up, 1, 2, 3 zigzag, 4. Well, there you have it. 5 zigzag was that big zigzag that we saw, which also explains the RSI being lower for wave 5. Okay, so the whole time it could be that that was a weak type 1 week 5 wave move up for wave 1 green wave 1. All right, and to add more credence to this, you got the rest of the pattern here. Sharp type 2 expanded zigzag wave A. You've got an expanded zigzag wave B, a C, and a D, because I can't change that from being a zigzag. I'm sorry. So this is where things get particularly interesting because we remember what the E waves look like. Okay, we remember what the E waves look like. Remember, we've had 2 of them before. And you try to talk about size matters. Well, wave E of wave 2 and wave E of wave 4, it's not exactly a pattern going on there. It's just, you know, a coincidence type thing that these waves happen to look big and look meaningful to some people who want to make them meaningful. And in my opinion, that's a fool's game. It's a fool's game. However, whatever, who cares about that? The point is, how do we look at this current move that's happening at the moment and what type of move is it? Right? So that's what I'm going to be focusing on in my next video. The more smaller degree move here, what's going on since April 2022, right? And how this can be looked at, in what stage of an E wave is this pattern in? Okay. So I just thought I'd share that because that really adds a lot more perspective to the whole wave 2 scenario ending in 2015, where we had this type of wave 1 that for Bitcoin lasted longer than it did for altcoins, but it still managed to create a wave 1, 2 at the lows, right? And a green wave 1. And then what we're seeing at the lows in altcoins is even more subdivisions for yet another wave 1, 2. So hopefully you found this video interesting and informative. Thank you for